Hi, Mark. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, I'm glad to do this. It's good. It'll be fun.
Yes, I'm excited. We have so much to catch up on and talk about. We're already anticipating it's going to be a two-part
Yeah,
podcast.
right,
Yes,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
lot,
Let's
lots of ground to cover, lots to hear and learn from you. Um,
yeah.
uh, can you introduce yourself to listeners?
Yeah. Um yeah, I'm Mark Pollock and married to Robyn. We just this last summer celebrated our 46th anniversary. So just rack Robyn back up into the sainthood category there, and very well. And so we have two grown sons, both of which now live in South Carolina. So we about a year ago packed up our bags and moved out here to South Carolina, and have been loving it. Really, I mean that allows us to be with our grandkids, and who we just spent some time with our granddaughter yesterday, and it's beyond incredible. You understand that grandpa um, thing quite well, Savan, and
Yes,
it's pretty awesome.
it's the best.
Um, yeah, it really is. So yeah, I retired about a year ago. Spent most of my career working as a mental health therapist with mostly with that at-risk youth in a variety of settings, residential, subacute settings, and then in the last number of years, spent time working in the correctional setting, and most of that time out at McLaren. I've got my McLaren marathon sweatshirt on right now, so just to honor those days. But yeah, but we decided to move up my retirement about a year, and we've moved out here to South Carolina, and it's been amazing. I'm spending some time right now these days getting some training around becoming a spiritual director,
Mm,
and that's been amazing and very helpful. The community that um, that I'm working through is just been so supportive in that, and that's just been great. So
mm.
yeah,
What's the
that's a
name of
that's
that group?
it's the Soul Shepherding Institute out of Los Angeles. Bill and Christy Galtier lead are the founders of that, and but there's training places back here. I go down to Georgia every few months, just outside of Atlanta, and do some retreats there. I'll do a couple more of those, and then some online training and receiving my own spiritual direction and those kind of things. So
Mhm.
that's been exciting to be a part of that and grow in that. So
Yeah. What
yeah,
what's one of the things that helped you decide to do that? Like you retired, you've
yeah,
moved, and then
yeah.
take on this other new thing.
Yeah, I think our interestingly, about that's probably been about 5 years ago. Our good friend Gary Tribbett said, "Mark, you ought to become a spiritual director," and I'd never even thought about it, and I kind of
Mm,
just even laid that aside
mm,
back in the day,
mhm,
and but I think the biggest thing that I'm recognizing, and maybe through the and as I was involved in church leadership when we were still in Oregon, and just kind of recognizing um, the place that I'm at, the place that I'm afraid too many of us have been at, is our maturity around what it means to be a healthy disciple, um, is short circuited a lot of times, and I think
mm,
the Lord has just put on my heart more and more how do we help. how do we as the body of Christ come around each other a little bit better to mature us to a place, getting past some of the um, divisive, canceling one another, the the lack of just solid maturity when it comes to differences. I remember saying at a retreat a number of years ago, um, you know, actually this was just before the month before COVID was officially on. Our church went on a leadership retreat, and I asked the question, "Are we really united if we can't talk about the things that we disagree about
Mm.
and that we see differently, and still love each other, and that kind of thing?" So a couple of those things like that, I think, have been the things that have motivated or were behind some of my motivation for wanting to be a part of the answer to that, and not just feel like I'm continuing to say, "Ain't it awful?" And so now there's this, God's using my past experiences in both the counseling realm as well as church leadership and ministry to just take the next step in this season in my life. And
Mm. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
that
yeah,
nothing's wasted.
yeah,
He uses
yeah,
our that. But I haven't had a spiritual director on the show, so I know this isn't what you came on here for. But I am
yeah,
really curious. I hope you
yeah,
can
yeah.
explain this a little bit. What would you say is like a key difference between
Hmm.
a therapist, mental health therapist, a pastor, and a spiritual director? Like what what
Hmm.
yeah, what are you learning, and how does that relationship or that role um
Yeah,
what's unique about that?
yeah. I think what comes to my mind, first of all, and it's more and not more than this, is about it's I feel like I'm learning to go to a kind of a whole new level around what it means to listen,
Mm,
both to God and to the person I'm sitting with.
mm,
That really, although obviously listening is a key component to counseling and therapy, but I think it's centering around the importance um, of having a partnership of three, that myself and the person I'm directing, we're learning to listen to what the spirit is saying in that moment. And my flaw, even as a therapist, often was to be much too prescriptive and of course in the mental health world, often there is a diagnosis that has to come along with the work that we do and that kind of thing. And this is staying away from kind of that more professional, um, even guideline that we have to follow. And
mm,
this is it just feels much more, and actually it's kind of relieving. I'm not there to fix anybody. I'm
mm, mhm,
and there's no take two of these and call me in the morning kind of deal. It's let's be still, um let's learn the skills of what it takes to hear the voice of God in our own lives and that kind of thing. So
mm,
um it's been, and I've said many times that this journey that I'm on right now, the training that I'm going through, is um if it doesn't benefit anybody else, it's benefiting me.
Mm,
And the work that I'm doing internally in my life. So
yeah.
I hope that gives a pinch of an answer to what
Hmm.
you're asking
A little,
about.
a little bit, but as we
Okay.
talk more, it'll be more clear too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The so, uh, so you're doing that training with the Soul Shepherding uh,
Hmm.
Institute,
Yeah.
and the but it's neat that uh, a friend, Gary Tribbett, kind of
Yeah.
spoke that idea or into your life, like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it took a little bit of time for it
Hmm.
to marinate,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
yeah, you made that decision, um,
Hmm.
and yeah. So what still I like that listening and stillness,
Yeah.
but then also skills. Um,
Yeah.
and there
Mhm.
it's uh there's different parts to the process of maturity.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but before we get into those, because
Hmm.
you know, we've got a list of different things that you've learned and are
Hmm.
are helpful. I want to go to the things you've seen that short circuit. You mentioned short
Yeah.
circuit growth or maturity,
Yeah.
and maybe get in the way of listening and stillness. What are you seeing
Mhm.
in the people that you're working with, or just
Mhm.
as a pastor?
Yeah.
Um, what do you think are some of the challenges people are facing with
Yeah.
their spiritual life, their faith?
Yeah. I think that um, one of the things I think, especially in kind of more the evangelical world that I've been a part of most of my adult Christian life, that um, we're too, as important as doctrine is, and thinking and understanding the scriptures correctly, we've been much too fixated on our head knowledge, and um and and even kind of downplay kind of the experiential, um both internally and amongst ourselves. We are a little, I think, a little too cautious. There's a place for that. I'm thinking right now of just some concerns I have of friends of mine who are too caught up in the experiential, and so there is a balance in there. But I think that um, allowing ourselves to, I think God has created us with with a mind, a a heart, that a soul that is made for hearing him. And we um this is part of the practice of what we've usually thought. But when we try to discern the will of God, or God walked me through this season of my life, most of the time we've said, well, pray and read your Bible more.
Mhm.
And there's this lack of personalization of me sitting down with God as my Father and experiencing His presence. Um, where it feels like I am just learning how that is a real thing. That there is this way that we can think about God, how we perceive God, and how we think about ourselves, that helps us um, really experience the presence of God more than just kind of filling our brain with more ideas and concepts about God. Um, we've heard, people, different people say we have enough information. How do we put that information um, into practical exercise, with each other, and allow ourselves to be in the presence of God more. And I'll go back to the word experientially. That there is something there, as far off as God seems sometimes.
Mm.
There is a personalness to Him as well. And I think the other thing that comes, as I say, that comes to my mind, is learning that God takes us through stages of development spiritually, just like we mature as human beings, emotionally and psychologically and that kind of thing. There's a spiritual process that I think most of our brothers and sisters don't fully understand, that um, you know there's a place we come to. There's stages, just like with in our human development. There's also stages in our spiritual development, and I think most of us get kind of stuck in a spiritual. I like to think about it as like a spiritual adolescence, and we don't let ourselves kind of mature into that. Now that's a whole nother podcast.
Well,
That
right, right. Well,
that
so, but in terms of like what holds us back, or
yeah,
gets us stuck, what are some of the hallmarks of spiritual adolescence, or someone
yeah,
being stuck spiritually?
yeah, I think I think we all get to a spot where kind of the Sunday school answers don't work for us as well. That
Mm.
there's the good foundational teaching that we get, just like in our families. We raise up our kids, and early on it's necessary that things are pretty black and white. That they're, yeah, don't run out into the street. These are the values of our home. These are the things that we believe. But just like, the work of an adolescent is to start asking questions and to kind of make things their own. I think in the church, what we've done is said that we get to a certain spot, and a question comes up.
Hmm.
Questions about, like, for instance, pain. If God's a loving God, how come I'm going through this? How come I'm not hearing His voice right now? Um, or um, even some of the cultural questions that we are going through as American Christians right now, around race or sexuality or whatever it might be. Um, a lot of times I feel like we don't give ourselves permission to ask those questions, and sometimes the church isn't a safe enough place, and therefore we get stuck in that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even kind of pre-adolescent. We don't when the questions we when the questions haven't even been raised yet, and we just stay there. But we somehow feel like we have to squish down those, yeah, but what about this? Those kind of questions that come up. And so therefore we don't work through those things, and we just kind of stay. Part of why I think we stay as spiritually immature as we are sometimes.
Yeah, it's for leaders, if you have, well, let me take another start at that. Um, it it's kind of paradoxical that that sometimes we hear that the sign of spiritual maturity is being comfortable with mystery and
Yeah.
being okay with not having black and white answers. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so that's a sign of maturity.
Hmm.
And but it, if you haven't gone through that process, then the questions of people in your congregation, doubts,
Yeah.
or hard questions
Yeah.
can be threatening.
Yeah.
Um, and so, uh, depending on the church, or the culture, uh,
Hmm.
is it okay to
Yeah.
question? Well,
Yeah.
to question God, to question the Bible, to question
Right.
truth.
Right.
Those,
Yeah.
these are black and white things.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't know. Uh, pe- um, not being having the freedom to ask questions,
Hmm.
but then also not having good answers, not having
Yeah.
realistic, good
Yeah.
answers for legitimate hard questions.
Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, yeah, that's hard. And sometimes folks experiencing that they come to the counseling center, um, because they don't have those conversations in the foyer
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
church or even in small group.
Yeah.
um and that that's kind of where, you know, at least for
Mhm.
me, uh
Yeah.
the line between spiritual direction and discipleship and counseling,
Yeah.
it's right next to each other because it is affecting their peace, their anxiety.
Yeah.
It, it's kind of scary, like
Well, when
to
you
go off on your own.
yeah, when you are in a place where you feel like you have to bear this question by yourself,
Mm,
or the circle is much too small
hmm.
of of who is bearing the question with you,
Hmm.
then then I just feel, I all of a sudden feel like a balloon that's about to burst,
Mm,
and that there's um man, it just adds to our brokenness when, but and part of what I'm learning is the power of being known by God, yeah, but also by one another. And a practical example of that is, like I said, Robyn and I had been married for 46 years, and so grateful for that. But she knows my junk better than anybody else, and just even this earlier this week, in the midst of some of my junk, you know, her knowing that, but um, not being, uh, her still being at a place where she can come and surround me, because she knows that I'm not defined by behavior and actions. She sees past that. She sees past my question. She sees past my doubt and fear and anxiety, and sees what God sees. And the power of that, um, is really hard to quantify, to say this is, um, to say how powerful that is just really is amazing to me. And then to expand that to friends that I have had, and have, that are, um, those are healing relationships, and I hope to reciprocate that as well in the friendships that I
yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So there's um, that whole idea of can we create, even if it's in a small community group, can we create a situation in our lives where our that community where there's this whole sense of being, safe and that kind of thing. One of the things I was going to share today, and we'll just kind of get out of order here and
Dive
how I
in.
but
Yeah.
it's but
Yeah.
but just listening to over the years, some of Daniel Siegel and Kurt Thompson talking about. I'm not even sure if they are the ones who originated this, but the whole idea of being, the four S's around being, I get them out of order all the time: safe, secure, soothed. What's the other one? Safe, secure, safe, secure. Um,
I'm guessing seen. I'm not sure.
Scene. I love you, man. That's it. That's it. Yeah, and I think and probably that's maybe even the most important thing is how do we um hey, I'm noticed if I see somebody at my community group or at my and just seeing that they're having a rough week, they don't have to say a word, and to come alongside that friend and to let them know that their circle is bigger than themselves,
Mm.
that there is I love Galatians 6, in part of the passage it says bear one another's burden, and then later on it says bear your own load. And I had that explained once, that bearing your own load is kind of that piece that you can, you do have the capacity and we do have the responsibility to bear our own load at some point. But then there's other times when I need you to come alongside me to say, I'm with you. I see you. It's safe for you to be weak and to bear a burden um, right now, and you don't have to perform tonight. You don't have to be a super Christian. You don't have to be. Your sainthood is not in question right now. You are secure, and so yeah. So all of that, back to where are the places that we are needing to grow in as the people of God, and as us individually learning to allow ourselves to experience what it fully means to be community with one another. I love what John Mark Comer and others have talked about, the value of community is not just attending some place Sunday morning. There's people. You have people in your life, and whether that's a community group or just your circle of friends that have the ability um, to speak into your life, um, to surround you, to support you, and then it's safe enough, mutually safe enough, to if um, if it's appropriate to be able to shoot straight with each other sometimes too. That there's and doing that in a compassionate way, but not hiding from the straight talk as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's so important.
yeah,
The I love that 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 helping people realize that the circle is bigger than themselves.
yeah,
Um, yeah, when you start to get overwhelmed with stress or depression,
Yeah.
want to isolate
Yeah.
and go inward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um and when things get dark and your circle is only yourself, that's your whole world,
Yeah.
and life does not feel good um
Yeah. And
in those
and
moments.
and put you into a cycle of of that hopelessness,
Mhm. Yeah.
um that it's always going to be like this,
Yeah.
in its worst case scenario. um I think fortunately somehow, in the human spirit is able to, you know, often enough, dig ourselves out of that. But that's still not the way we're made. We're not made to, be. It's not good that man is alone.
Right.
you
And
know.
you described Robyn like, I don't know if you were heading down to like a dark place or a downward spiral, but she like didn't let you go there. Like
Oh, it
she
was. Yeah.
wrapped you up, and
Yeah.
that's where you, instead of like talking about being loved by God, that you
Yeah.
experience being loved in a very
There's
powerful way.
and there goes back to one of the first things, I was talking about, the experiential reality, and understanding that God obviously speaks through the scriptures, and through church life and those kinds of formal things that we have. But God often speaks through us, doesn't he? To Robyn didn't even say a whole bunch. She just moved toward me. She wasn't she wasn't bothered by um my weakness. Now I'll be, in the reality of that marriage or community life, or circle of friends or whatever. Little bit later on, she had to deal with her own anxiety around what I was going through, and and that kind of thing. And so, um the the circle needs to the maturity needs to be, then I need to be able to turn around and allow her to deal with how she processes my anxiety, my fears, my worries. um and that there needs to be that reciprocal kind of thing. This isn't just a one way, um you come and fill all of my anxiety and my needs and that kind of thing. There's this partnership that we have in letting each other voice whatever we're going through at a given
Can we keep it here in this marriage moment?
Yeah.
I'm just like trying
Yeah.
to get as much wisdom as I can from you. Um, how how can couples do that less defensively?
Mm,
Like how would you encourage couples where the emotion, my emotions, whether it's anger or upset or
mhm,
frustration, irritability,
mhm.
my,
Yeah.
my partner doesn't handle it well, doesn't listen
Yeah.
well, they get
Yeah.
defensive, and vice versa. Uh,
Yeah.
can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. And that, first of all, um Robyn and I don't do that perfectly, very, the
Okay.
way there I've said, to her, and kind of use this in helping others.
This is
The
not theory then. This is real
Yeah,
life then.
no, no, this is
Yeah.
this is I wish I yeah. I
When it goes well.
When it goes well, it's beautiful. There's been too many times where where we have gotten defensive and become pretty stinky with each other,
Mhm.
um over such ridiculous things.
Well, 46
Yeah.
years gives you lots of chances.
Yeah, there's, we've,
So,
praise God for the 46 years. But what comes to my mind, what I started to say, what happens, I think sometimes I've said to Robyn, what I think, what you believe is too important to me. There's and what I mean by that is that if she has a different opinion about something, a decision we're trying to make, or um, whether that's big or tiny, um, her difference sometimes is too important to me to, and I have the in my worst moments the compulsion to convince her otherwise,
Mm.
and thus here comes the tension, and it's not, and that comes back to this counseling idea of, and the psychological idea of being able to differentiate and be to individuate from one another, that there's that healthy thing, and this shows up in church.
Those are two fancy words,
Yeah,
individuate and differentiate. Can you, I understand. I think I understand what you mean. I
yeah,
mean, but can you flesh that out a
yeah,
little bit more?
yeah, I a very important, I think, marital dynamic is, we especially in the Christian world, we talk about, and they became one flesh,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
there, the importance of that. But then there's also this place for, I need to be my own person,
Mm.
and when I'm secure as my own person, then Robyn can have a counterpoint to what I believe, and I'm not threatened by that.
Mm.
I
Okay. Yeah.
one, I'm allowing her to be her own person too.
Hmm.
And again, this applies in church life, in leadership,
Or on
especially
social
being
media,
so, yeah,
the
yeah,
comments.
yeah. Like, okay, I am not going to get triggered by um that comment that, that honestly gets to me, or you're in a church leadership meeting and we're not on the same page on a particular issue.
Mm.
There's So whether it's marriage, um, working um, at an agency, as I did, several different agencies, no duh, there's going to be differences of viewpoint on things, and I can choose to um, go to war over each of those differences, or I can, you know, again, practice being my own self, and 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 here's again part of what I'm trying to learn in my own listening to God, listening to other people, that kind of thing is um in the importance of learning to be a good listener and not get triggered into fixing somebody's point of view on something,
Mm.
um and 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 maybe I'm the one that needs to have my point of view fixed on something.
Mm.
So let me bring up, this makes me think of, I've been thinking a little bit about, and I'm just processing this in my own head. If 1 Corinthians 14 talks about eagerly desire spiritual gifts, especially that you may prophesy. I've inserted, God give me grace on this, but I first of all, I've started thinking about listening as a spiritual gift, and is and so to clarify, I don't um I don't necessarily believe that the scriptures have listed out all the possible spiritual gifts that one, the people of God could have experienced throughout the history of the church. So I'm thinking about listening because I know I'm not the best listener in the world, and I've rarely experienced many people who I've sat down and had a conversation with, and I felt really back to being seen, back to being heard. That there is that I think that's something that the church should be asking for. Father, give me, the Holy Spirit, give me the spirit of being able to listen to my brothers and sisters well. That there's something supernatural even about that that could be a gift, and it goes back to this idea of being able to individuate, being able to be my own person with somebody, because I'm really wanting to hear this other person's heart, and being able to hear what what it is that's delighting them, what it is that's concerning them,
Mm,
what it is that we have tension about.
mhm,
So that's applying to marriage and church life and um, my work life.
mhm.
How do I listen to this person who has a totally different worldview than I
Yeah. I think when we you talked about like being safe and secure, like
do?
in relationship, when
Hmm.
we are safe and secure, and seen like we see ourselves, like
Yeah,
clearly we're grounded in who we are, our identity, our values, and we're kind of settled, then we can focus on the other person better. If
yeah,
we've got all these insecurities and doubts and fears and bouncing around, it's very distracting to be present
yeah,
with someone.
yeah, yeah,
um or maybe we're in a good place, they say something and it just shakes everything up,
yeah,
versus they say something and like, oh, that's what they think, that's what they believe, that's them,
hmm, yeah,
and like I don't agree with it, but
hmm,
like it's fine.
hmm,
It's not threatening. um
yeah,
doesn't have to be. um
and,
and
and
when you say like asking to listen, I think listening is so vital to loving well. Like
yeah,
whenever we ask
yeah,
to love our people
yeah,
better, our family, our members of our church better, we, we it involves listening better.
oh yeah, yeah,
um, uh, and it takes stillness, it takes slowing down to
yeah,
listen well.
yeah. One of and again, maybe related to this, one of the things that I've been over the last couple of years have been thinking more about the term meekness. What's it mean to be meek?
Mhm,
And I I appreciate some definition that has that I came across. Um, and I think even and Andrew Murray talks about the term meekness was used of training a horse so that it um, has a type of composure that when it gets into battle, it's a war horse back in the day
mm,
isn't getting triggered by bullets flying by it or swords being waved and that kind of thing. It has a composure to allow its work for its rider.
mm,
And so in the midst of chaos, blessed are those are who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth. um, I think Jesus is saying, we think about it as kind of a humility and even weakness. sometimes. But I think what he's saying is, blessed are those who are composed. And I think that's another way of saying,
Mm,
blessed are those who are secure in whom God has made them to be. Blessed are those who can, in the midst of a hard conversation, can maintain their composure, because you're going to inherit some much better things
mm,
by holding to that posture than if, oh, I've got to convince somebody of something, and I'm getting unsettled and decomposed,
mm,
um,
mm,
when I'm in a conflict with somebody, rather than being just still. And you're right. It goes back to one of the things I'm learning and through soul shepherding is, my practice of learning to be still and to be quiet, and making that a part of a practice, getting past the uncomfortableness of not having any noise on, for extended periods of time, and sometimes that's been, I can only do 5 minutes, but sometimes you have to, you work past that, and God starts developing composure and meekness in you, because you're getting comfortable with being still with him.
mm. Yeah.
So yeah.
I had a professor who shared that one of the most healing, profound things in his life was to do like a silent retreat,
Yeah.
um, for like a weekend. And he
Yeah.
just describes how hard that was. Like it was
Oh yeah.
agonizing at times. But this was before cell phones. This was before smartphone.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's even more excruciating, more difficult to
Mhm.
be still and
Mhm.
listen to for God, to God, um, to um, to be undistracted
Yeah.
for any length of time.
Yeah.
I sometimes encourage clients to do just a half day
Yeah.
disconnected
Yeah.
for starters. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and again, back to, listening to kind of the updated work that Comer is doing around, practicing the way, and I just think of him talking about Sabbath, that thinking of Sabbath as a resistance to the culture, um, and that it's never more true than in our time, that whether it's Sabbath or, um, you know, disconnecting from the noise. Um, and some of that is even Christian noise. Um,
oh, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
that,
I like my
that,
podcasts, like
yeah.
playing. Yeah,
I
going.
love
Yeah.
podcasts. I love music. I love,
Oh wait, we're on one.
oh no, yeah.
We're
Oh
on one
yeah.
right now.
I
Keep
got to
listening,
disconnect.
folks. Keep listening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't turn us off yet.
Yeah.
Um, no, but and all of those things are tremendous tools. But I would say the best gift that and it's a season I'm in retirement. I don't have, kids at my feet, except when I choose to love on my grandkids. And, and that's in itself its own great spiritual discipline,
Mhm.
beautiful time. But, um, I have the time to reflect, and those kinds of things. So it's been a really helpful healing time for me. But
Mm,
I also am very sensitive. You alluded to this earlier, that, how do you practice solitude and silence when you've got, three kids running? I'm picturing right now, both in my kids' families, and and I think especially mothers who are trying to do um, raise their little kids at home.
Mhm.
How does that mom find silence and
Right.
solitude?
It's hard
Yeah,
to find the time to take a shower. Um,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
The
um, so
I
so all of this is it's resistance and it's work. It really is work both to change. Um, there's certain things that we just have to be open to thinking about how do we do this different,
Mhm.
even within the midst of kids and career and paying bills um, and my car just got a flat or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah. Like that. How? Like you know,
Yeah.
uh, I wasn't kidding. Like it's been so fun talking to you, Mark. Like I forgot. Like we're doing a podcast. Um, and
Yeah.
I I don't know. We might need like 3 or 4 episodes to
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's so good to talk to you. Um, so maybe we can start digging into how next
Yeah.
time we talk. But
Yeah.
um, I'm just curious. As you describe retirement and going to South Carolina, um, and you have some distance and space from Portland.
Hmm.
This is a little bit of a shift, and you're not prepared to answer this, but I'm just curious, not to rip on Portland, but uh, now that you're not here pastoring,
Hmm.
you were serving the people in
Hmm.
Southeast Portland, in
Hmm.
Gresham. What what are you what are you seeing about Portland now that
Hmm.
you've left? Like
Hmm.
what are the needs of the people
Hmm.
spiritually that you served and um yeah, because my wife and I we're still here. We're still trying to
Yeah.
serve here in Southeast Portland. Um
Yeah.
yeah, any thoughts about that as a pastor?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as almost seamless as the transition back here has been, and I'll say that minus some family health things that have
Mhm.
been going on, and that's been difficult. But we, I just pulled up an old picture of being up on Powell Butte, um, a couple days ago, and a beautiful sunrise that I had the pleasure of being up there as a hit. It just reminds me of my love for Portland and our dearest friends. Even though we were developing some good friendships back here, our dearest friends are largely in the Portland area or have some kind of roots in Oregon. Um, and so, yeah, first of all, my heart for the city. Obviously, it's not a secret that it's a pretty divided city, that there's some extremes of beliefs that again make it hard to find unity and that kind of thing. But it goes back to what we've been talking about, and that this isn't unique necessarily to Portland, um, because you know surprise surprise, South Carolina has the same questions that are going on in Portland, and maybe just not quite as headline news as happens in Oregon. But I think just being able to, what we were just talking about, could we as God's people wherever we're at, but be able to maintain our composure when it
Mhm.
comes to loving people. You know that um, that God is at work, you know, in the lives of this person, and um, can my listening ear, can my loving ear be attentive enough to walk with that person right where they're at, just as I am without one plea, you know. Can we do that um, with the people God brings into our life, you know? The and we know when I know when I experience somebody, as we mentioned, whether it's Robyn or a friend or a stranger, sometimes that gives ear to my life. There's a power in that I wish we would gather, and that's the gospel too. You know, it's us living out. You know, how did Jesus respond to people who were different than him? And rarely was that with a machete. You know, he loved on people very tenderly and wasn't threatened by their differences and that kind of thing. So um, I guess that's my heartfelt response to your question. You know, of um, it's hard to see and hard to experience. I think especially some of the cultural things that we're facing, but you know, God's not threatened by those things. He's still a loving, compassionate God that wants to come alongside people that don't even know who He is yet. So yeah,
Thank you for that. Yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah. So this episode, it's kind of uh uh what is it? Teeing up um a
yeah,
a peace plan that
yeah,
you've been
yeah,
developing and working on,
yeah, yeah,
or it's just can you say a little bit about the this peace plan
yeah.
um as kind of intro, and then next time we talk we'll dig into it.
We'll dive into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think with the delight of being retired, and I highly recommend that. So yeah, move up your retirement plan, Savannah, as
Oh, for
quickly as
sure. I
possible.
will play this for Julie. That's the
All
plan. For sure.
right. Sounds good. But I think with the time, and I on one level, it's given me I some of the things that I would use in the past, like work or even church ministry, to distract myself, aren't there very much anymore. Even though I informally still do some of the things that I did in Portland. Um, I most days are my own, and I have lots of time to think and process through some things. But that's what that has brought up, is how pervasive my internal anxiety has been over the years. There were a couple of seasons in my life where I went through flat out anxiety attacks.
Mm.
A couple of different
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, pretty
Mm.
debilitating time. And in one of those, I had been working at an agency for over 10 years, and took a vacation, and the thought of going back, there was a lot of the agency had moved into a fee for service kind of thing, and there was quotas, and I
Mm.
was taking work home every weekend just to get my paperwork done and all of those kinds of things.
Mm.
um,
Mhm. Lots of
so
pressure.
lots of internal pressure, and it was never enough. That's the sense that I had. But the thought of after a week's vacation of going back in on Monday um, paralyzed me. I was just like trembling inside. I don't know. I
Mm,
didn't even know how to describe that. But
mm,
I went in Monday. Uh, at the time, it was a community-based program that I was in, so I was going from home to schools and different places where kids were at, and I just pulled over after a particular meeting. I just remember, calling up Robyn and saying, I can't do this anymore.
mm,
And I went in the next day and put my 2 weeks notice in.
mm,
Um, and, and God, got me through that. And we, you know, but that's the kind of thing. Anxiety has affected my sleep over the years. That's largely in a better place right now, but that's another place where it showed up. And there was a season where there would be one night a week, or early on in kind of 40 mid 40s or whatever, where there'd be one night a week where I didn't sleep at
you're
all,
just up all night. Yeah.
up all night. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
And those are kind of the couple of big things that have where anxiety has shown up. But
mm,
even, well, honestly, even, as I shared with you a little bit last night, just even doing this podcast, when I preach, when I'm doing something that I become self-conscious about that. And so
mm,
I've I've the the distractions that I had when I was working full time and
mm,
doing ministry, a, a lot of attention given to that. Now that those are it, I'm thinking about it less as, oh my goodness, the my props are pulled out from. I'm not thinking about it in that way. I'm thinking about it as a season where God's gracing me with the opportunity to, okay, this is the time that you need to to deal with, your internal work
mm,
is to work on this anxiety. And I think,
mm,
um uh, being able to pass that on to my sons and my grandchildren and
mm,
my sons' wives, modeling um, how to um, have a peace plan, and that's what I'm. There's probably some better term for that, but that's what I've named it at this point. Is just I just started jotting down some things that I want to incorporate into my life, not as a task or as a work or that kind of thing, but just some 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 concepts that I want to soak in,
mm.
but I also want to be able to do some practical things, and some of that is what we were just talking about a bit ago around solitude and
Mm.
silence and getting away from the noise. So
Yeah, yeah, good. That's good. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to digging
yeah,
into that with you,
yeah,
Mark. And so for
yeah.
listeners, in the meantime, what I encourage you to think about is,
Hmm.
um, what are the things that steal my peace?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
what are the things that are causing me worry and
yeah.
anxiety right now? Um, uh, and insecurity
Hmm.
and self doubt. That those are my
Yeah,
things. The
yeah,
insecurity.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
besides the plan, I'm just interested in uh your wisdom as a father. Now that my children are young adults, or well, not too young. They're uh, and even as you were describing that, I'm thinking like, oh, just like how much did my anxiety
Yeah, yeah,
and what is
yeah,
it uh yeah, lack of confidence, insecurity,
yeah,
how much that affected my parenting
yeah,
over the
yeah,
years. The dad I was, and I was just like, oh man, my kids know. They know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
their
yeah.
dad, their dad's flaws, but
Well, here's
so
the
it's a
grace.
lifelong
Yeah,
project.
it's that's exactly right. And all of us. I mean, if there's, I can give some encouragement to the listeners that
Mm,
that thankfully I'm not at a season where, at least today, I'm not beating myself up over, these insecurities.
yeah.
We all are flawed, we all are broken, we're all have capacity for redemption, and God healing the places in us
Mm,
that are hurting in our, aren't what we want them to be. um, and we're all at different places with that, and some people's work is more complicated than the next person's, and but hang in there, everybody, and um, keep doing the work. it's
yes,
it's going to be worth it.
yes. Thank you, Mark. All right.
Yeah.
I'll see you next time.
Okay, sounds good.